This Red Blue episode was supposed to be out about 3 months ago, and it's been delayed over and over and over again. So we're just going to jump right into it. Thank you everyone who has been asking for an Izzet video, and trust me, you will be getting an Orzhov video in the future. I will talk more about that at the end of the episode. Today, specifically, we'll be talking about the artist and the scientist. Artist, of course, being the red-blue color combination, while the scientist is the blue-red one. Together, they form the Izzet color combination. For the majority of this video, I'll be referring to them as Izzet, except for when I refer to them as Prismari. So the easiest way to try and figure out what exactly it is that red-blue stands for is to look at what green-white stands for and be like, oh, that's the conflict between these two color combinations. So green-white is a very traditional color. They tend to try and stick to a specific set of rules or ways that the world should exist. That's where you have the monks in that scenario and stuff like that. But red-blue looks at that as very uncreative, very dull, very boring, and with that uninspired viewpoint of the green-white color combination, the Izzet want to create an impact. That's just the common desire between blue and red, create an impact. Where they differ is that red wants to create more of an artsy effect, while blue wants to create more of I guess you say practical or rational effect. So for the artist side of things, it's about evoking emotion. It's about creating something that will leave a lasting impression on the person that experiences it. Of course, experience, emotion, all these things, we all know that's in red's wheelhouse. That said, the blue side wants to create something that will impact the world in a more, I guess you could say more practical, like I said, more practical sense, where if you are inventing something or doing something or creating something that is specifically going to either make people's lives better, make their lives easier, make it more efficient, this is the way that blue-red tends to work as opposed to red-blue. So, as you would expect with red-blue, this whole deal, they're the two most creative colors. Black may be particularly good at scheming, you may say, or white might be particularly good at trying to convince people charismatically, enforcing dogma, stuff like that. But when it comes down to it, the most creative colors are red and blue. Because red is unpredictable. Red can go off the wall, crazy, insane asylum if it feels like it. While blue tries to push the boundaries of what is reality, what is true. That's why illusionists love blue and stuff like that. Because there's constantly new things being created. And both of these sides, red and blue, it's why they love artifice. They're the two colors that are most associated with artifice in the game, is specifically because of that. If you look at the Izzet and you look at the Prismari, this is a little bit of a different thing than we normally do in this scenario for these episodes, but this is the first episode since Strixhaven came out that we released. And I feel it's really important to look at the two sides. One focused on what they had in common with the Izzet, one was the conflict, which was Prismari. But if you look at it from a grander perspective, the two sides also express different desires. Because in the case of Izzet, they lean blue. It's all about invention and doing things and creating things. And usually those things are meant to improve things. That's where you have all these pipe works and stuff in Ravnica, because these things are being improved upon and expanded upon, and it's just consistently growing. It's the heart of Ravnica's infrastructure is the Izzet. But then you look at the Prismari, and all of them, both the red and the blue, are about creating art. It's about creating something that people will be able to look at and be like, ooh, very impressive, very inspiring. Now, their approaches may be slightly different. The bluer sides of Prismari are more methodical with what they do and more about the technical beauty of things, while the red is more about fire! Because, I mean, how else are they going to write red? They're not particularly nuanced in that case. So the weakness of the Izzet, one could say, is failure. They're the two colors, red and blue, that are most likely to break when things don't go their way. With blue, it's more of like a bottle cap being put onto a shaken soda, and it just continuously being shaken until the pressure so much that it just explodes. This is the lesser shown side of blue. I talk about it in the mono blue video, where there's just that moment of it snaps and everything goes crazy. So looking at it from that perspective, red also has that same problem. They're the ones that are going to fly off the handle when things don't go their way. The two colors together means that a failure, instead of just being a setback or an obstacle to overcome or just a part of the natural cycle, it becomes this catastrophic event. And so it can send red-blue things spiraling into basically defeat from a single failure. Now, of course, you look at something like the Izzet, failure has been hardwired into their infrastructure, where every failure is technically a success. They've addressed it and they're trying to rework it. But at the same time, those failures are still explosive, and that's still a problem for the city at large. Whenever an Izzet project goes haywire, people die. And if you look at the Prismari, they haven't taken that feedback loop approach. Instead, they try to channel it into their work. But then you look at characters such as Rutha, who they are suffering from basically depression and writer's block because they can't get something made. They're constantly faced with failure. And that's really just a great character case for a red-blue individual who is suffering from the greatest weakness red-blue has. If you can't create something, then you feel like you failed. That said, it's time for the best part of this entire series, where I take two characters, a hero and a villain, and I express to you how I think they're red-blue, or whatever color the episode is about. So in this particular case, we're going to start off with the hero, Jimmy Neutron. Now, I know Jimmy Neutron's kind of an easy pick. I could have picked basically any scientist character because they all follow the same kind of basic idea of a person with unbridled creativity who just tries to make things and do things, and then they go haywire, and then they use their brilliance to kind of get themselves out of the problem. Classic formula. It's basically every Jimmy Neutron episode. You could take Victor Frankenstein as well. Same deal. That's why a lot of the, you have the Scabarin from the Innistrad, is because they're blue scientists. Their whole deal is that they're creating these things. But then they're fueled by their obsession, by their passion. And that, I didn't mention it, but obsession is a huge part of red-blue. I wouldn't consider that exactly to be a weakness, because that's kind of what it takes to push a red-blue over the edge, to get into that mindset of I can do this, because they get so engrossed in their work. It is both a blessing and a curse, and it felt like kind of a cop-out to say that obsession is the main thing that is both a strength and a weakness for red-blue, which is why I went with what I had instead. Like I was saying, he kind of fits that mold of the character who is bombastic, unpredictable, very chaotic, and will, he has brain blasts. He literally just stands there and he forces a thought to explode out of his head. So I feel he's really blue-red with the way he acts with things. He definitely leans more on the blue side of things than he does on the red side. But that's expected from a character who's portrayed as a smarty pants. Now, this next one might be controversial because I think this is an obvious pick. I know it's going to take a little bit of convincing because Azula from Avatar: The Last Airbender could be seen as a mono-black or black-red character. Maybe even just Grixis. But I firmly believe that she is blue-red specifically. And this is going to get into a bit of a spoiler territory. At this point, I think the entire planet has seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, so I'm not really worried about that. So I'm just going to get right into it. Now, getting out of the way the obvious bit of she uses fire, so it's red, but it's blue, so it's blue. There's also the fact that you can just kind of look at how she was raised. Her father, the Fire Lord, the Father Lord, they both had, he had a strong black core to his character. He was ambitious, he wanted to take over basically everything. All these different aspects that go into the mono-black villain archetype. Just the easy villain that you, oh no, bad guy, gotta send good guy to stop bad guy kind of deal. But Azula has a lot more to her. Because as you see, when she's a kid, not only is she practicing her firebending, she's trying to be perfect. And perfection is not necessarily something that mono-black would want or red looks for, but it's definitely something blue strives for. It's literally like the whole, it's the core principle of blue is finding that perfection. And she's obsessed with it. She is consistently trying to find ways to be better than literally everyone else. And when she doesn't do her best, when she doesn't do as well as she says she's going to do, she sees it as a complete and utter failure. And you don't really see that early on because she's very superior. She's trained so much, she's worked so hard, so she's very successful in everything she does at the early stages of the episodes. But as the story progresses, you kind of start to see her gears are getting a little too tight. Her screws are getting a little too loose. And you start to see her kind of lash out at people that she shouldn't be. Now, naturally, she has a very explosive personality, which shows the red aspects. But you really start to see everything spiral out of control in the final season. When she loses her friends, her two closest friends, who are basically just her lackeys as far as she treated them. But the general idea of, oh no, this person is just left me, I'm now alone. And Azula realizes that she's basically lost. She's lost her friends, she's lost her, I guess you could say, her pride as well. Everything is falling apart, and then her father makes her the new Fire Lord, the Fire Empress or whatever. And when he does that, she's like, woohoo, I did it. But she's not happy. Instead, she has this psychotic break where her mother basically shows up and is like, hey, you're evil. And she can't deal with that. And she starts to literally spew fire out of her mouth. She starts basically exiling everyone around her. She loses it completely. She goes off the rails. She goes full on red-blue failure mode and goes crazy. None of her actions are inherently black. Because she's not really ambitious as much as she believes that she's supposed to be there. It's like a hierarchy thing. It's closer to green than black. But by those same ideas, she just thinks that's the perfect form she can take. To her idea, perfection means becoming the fire lady. All of this comes into a head when she's frozen basically in place, and then she's tied to the grating, and she's done. She starts crying. She's broken. And just her arc from super intimidating fire-breathing lady to I want to get with this guy because I think we could take control of the world because we're both charismatic, to I am now chained to the floor and crying uncontrollably. There's this arc, and at every point of it, she's red-blue. And I really do feel that red-blue fits her just so perfectly that I had to include her in this particular thing over characters that are easy, like Eggman, where it's like, oh yeah, he's a red-blue scientist. We already had Jimmy Neutron. We didn't want to have another one like that. That said, this episode is basically over. I'm just going to go ahead and cover what's going to be happening in the future. Right now, we're at nearly 190 subscribers. Once we hit 200, I'm going to release the black-white video. This way, I have to work on it because I don't know when that'll happen. I'll have to have it ready. So the moment we hit 200, the next week, that video is going up. Doesn't matter what our thing is as far as our scheduling goes. That's the video that we're going to release, is my Orzhov black-white video. And it's going to be the last one in this series of 10 multicolored episodes. We will then cover the monocolored ones and the tricolor ones, which will probably be one episode because of the way they work. I'll explain that in that actual video. And, of course, once we've completed everything, we will do the most important of them all, the colorless episode. But that's going to take some time. And I'm looking forward to when I finally get to do that episode, release it. I already have it all cooked up in my little noodle. So we'll see you guys in the next episode. And until then, travel well.